Well, Jeff,
Yeah,
it's
that's
good to hear
amazing.
from you. For those who don't know, you and I went to college together at American University back in, I guess, was early 2000s. And then, now you have your band Divided Heaven. We're talking about the new single, but before we get into that, here at Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passions. I want to know where your passion for music came from that led you to this music career. Was there an album you heard, a live performance you saw, or something that was natural for you as a child?
I think there's a few pivotal moments. The first that comes to mind is I have an older sister, and it's as I'm saying this, I'll try not to get emotional. I I live in a house that's directly now behind the house where I was born, and I have memories of that house, but I was very little. But one of the memories I have in that house is of my sister singing "Material Girl"
Oh,
and
wow.
"Like a Virgin" at 5.5, 6 years old, and I was 2.5. So my first memory of music is Madonna, and I loved Madonna as a very, very, very as a toddler. And then as I got a little bit older, I became a sucker for really cool harmonies. So I loved the Beach Boys and the Monkees, and especially the Beatles. And then once I was cognizant enough to kind of understand that there's a cool element to danger, I really fell hard for the hair metal bands. I loved that era of music at such a young age. I was wearing Motley Crue t-shirts in first grade, going to school being like, do you like Shout at the Devil or Dr. Feelgood better, man? And my classmates were like into New Kids on the Block or whatever. And then,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, I'm sure kind of like you, once Green Day and the Offspring and Bad Religion and Rancid kind of hit it, then I fell into the punk thing. And the reason why the punk thing is still resounded isn't so much because of the music, even though I still love those bands and I still think they make great records, but there's a subculture and there's a networking uh, capacity, and most importantly, there's a community that's predicated on helping people and being open-minded and being accepting that exists in the punk rock world that didn't really exist, to me, at least as a young kid, loving the Beatles or Poison or Warrant or the Monkees.
Oh,
So I
absolutely.
would say it
Yeah.
was those four things. It was Madonna was my introduction to music. The first thing that I discovered on my own was the Beatles. The first thing I really loved was the hair metal stuff. And then the thing that changed my life and the trajectory of my life forever was punk.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of punk, before we get into Divided Heaven, you're in a Philly band, the Boyles. Was that is that right?
You
I
remember
remember.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
still. That's why I had to bring that. So you were going to school in Washington D.C. and still driving back to do shows. I think up and down the East Coast. Actually, they were based in Philly, but
Yeah, it was Tuesday nights, so much like tonight. Um, yeah, for whatever reason, I just scheduled the classes. You remember at American University,
yeah.
classes were either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday, and then Friday was kind of a weird whatever, or a Wednesday and Friday. And I just kind of kept my Tuesdays pretty light. And so at around 3 in the afternoon, I would jet up and I would get up there by 5:30, because it was in Westchester, Pennsylvania, so outside of Philly a little bit. Therefore, I didn't have to fight as much traffic as if they were actually based in Philadelphia.
Hmm.
And we would practice for a few hours, and then I would drive home. I'd get home around 1 a.m. I remember that you and I had a class on Wednesday mornings that I could never get to. It was called The History of Documentaries.
Yes.
You remember this? And
Yeah,
it
I
was taught
do.
by the dean of the School of Communications at American. Um, I can picture his face, but I can't remember his name. Cudlow?
Yeah, I've pictured his face perfectly, but I can't remember his
Yeah.
name either. But yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I couldn't get my shit together for that class. It didn't do too well, but yeah, the Boyles were one of my favorite bands. They were really the first local band that I fell in love with, and
Nice.
a few years went by, and they were kind of growing in popularity, and they needed an oomph, and they knew me from the bands that I had played in, and they knew I was a good guitar player and I was a solid bandmate and I could tour. So I provided that oomph for them. And, if I may say so myself, I'm not going to say that necessarily the songs that we did as the Boyles when I was in the band were the best of their career, but I will say that I gave them um, kind of a rejuvenating little spike of enthusiasm and energy that kind of propelled us for a pretty good touring cycle, which is wild considering that I was a full-time student as well.
Yeah, that's what was so impressive about it, so.
Yeah, it was looking back on it, it was kind of intense. And there were a few times where I remember, scratch that. There are often conversations I have with people from college who say, "Do you remember when this happened?" And I don't. And it was, like people are regaling stories of epic nights of so-and-so hooked up with who, and this person jumped off the balcony, and this did, and there are a lot of nights that I don't remember from our days at American because I simply wasn't there because the Boyles were in Boston, or we were in Columbus and Pittsburgh that weekend, or we were in Charlotte, or, any of these other places. So it was quite a balancing act looking back on it.
Cool. Let's talk about Divided Heaven. I mean, this is your baby. You formed it all yourself, do everything. Just some history of that. When did you first form this? I know you also played Vans Warped Tour. Talk about a little history before we get into the single.
Yeah, well, when I was at American University with you, I took a semester and went to Berlin. And obviously I couldn't continue to play in the bands that I was in for that semester, but I had an 8-track and I had my guitar. And so I was writing songs, and it was really the first time that I was writing songs just for myself. I didn't have another singer in mind, or I wasn't trying to write for somebody's perceived style of what they wanted it to be. So that was really the germ of the idea. And it wasn't until about 3 years later that I got the nerve to like learn how to sing and actually play shows when I was living in New York City. And I put the kibosh on it real quick because it made me so uncomfortable to be a solo performer. And then after about a year of living in Los Angeles, I hadn't touched my guitar in 9 months or so.
Wow.
I had to help set up a show for the bands that I knew that were touring through Hollywood, and the locals canceled last minute. And I was like, well, I'm not going to make these guys be the only fucking band that plays tonight. Like, I'll do a solo Divided Heaven set. And there was somebody in the crowd there, my friend Bradley, who I had never known before that night. But after the set, he came up to me, and he's from Orlando, actually, but he's very typical California. He's like, "Dude, that was so rad, dude. I'm so stoked. That was awesome. I'm going to record you, blah, blah, blah." And you know what it's like in Los Angeles. You meet these people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, just go away. So
know.
I thought it was just like drunk sincerity. I didn't think anything of it. But he turned out to not only be a good producer, and I made my first record, but he's one of my best friends to this day. And
that's awesome.
He really kind of ignited. He gave me the confidence that I needed to actually do it. And then it wasn't until a few years later that I started to tour full time, and the opportunities started to pile up, and I made the decision to tour full time and go like that. Yeah.
Nice. Which leads you to your new single, which you dropped. Was it yesterday at midnight or yesterday?
I guess Tuesday the 27th was the release day.
Today,
yeah.
Then. This same day as what's the wrestler's name? The guitars.
Elias. Yes.
Elias. He just released his album.
I know Elias. I think he's doing better on the charts than I am. Unfortunately.
Well, let's change that right now.
Yeah.
Single's called "They Poisoned Our Fathers," and it's featuring guest vocals by Lydia Loveless. Talk about the inspiration for writing this track. It's definitely appropriate now with the political climate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a political person. Not all Divided Heaven records are inherently political, but they have that DNA to them because that's the kind of person that I am. And something that I've recognized during the Trump years, as I've been touring during the Trump years, has been the recurring conversation that I've had with people that I know that we express to each other, "I can't believe my father-in-law voted for Trump," or "I can't believe my dad did this," or "I can't believe my brother is a Trump supporter." And
every family has one too, I've learned.
So. Yes, every family has at least one. And it just kind of became this thing. And Divided Heaven was touring a lot in the beginning of the Trump years, and that was really when Divided Heaven as a full band started to get really busy. And we spent a lot of time in gas stations and rest stops and Wendy's and all these places and airports where we just saw primarily Fox News, and we saw what I describe as a poisoning of the baby boomer culture, who worked so hard to protect you and I
Yeah.
Steve,
Oh, absolutely.
but have succumbed to such a idiotic con man as Donald Trump to actually believe that he gives a fuck about them when he doesn't give a fuck about anybody but
Yeah,
himself.
exactly.
And I tried to channel that anger to a myriad of topics that are important to me that I understand are not important to everybody, but you know, women's rights. And I would look at it and say, all right, you're a Trump supporting man. Are you not going to take into account Trump's policies, his Supreme Court picks at the time when I wrote the song, the potential picks,
Yeah.
the effect that it's going to have on the women in your lives? Like, are you selfless enough to not vote for him and not support him because of the effect it's going to have on women? Or something else I'm passionate about is, uh, we need to reform the gun laws in this country. And I see, a lot of Trump supporters are very pro-gun, and that's fine. I believe in the Second Amendment for people that want to follow the law, but nobody needs to have AR-15s.
Yeah,
And
there's
when
a
these,
difference, you know.
yeah, when these mass shootings happen,
You could have a handgun to protect your home. I don't think you need AR-15.
yeah, and I have
Army's
friends
gonna
who are
be, you know.
who are hunters and all, and that's all great.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like when we have these mass shootings, like, how are you gonna? It's like I watched a generation of men get more upset at Greta Thunberg from Europe and these amazingly brave Parkland school shooting survivors from South Florida.
Oh yeah.
I watched these men in this country get so irate that these young people, particularly these young girls, had the balls to come out and say what needed to be said. And I was like, wait, you're more upset that these young women are standing up for themselves than you are at the atrocities that led them there? Or
Yeah.
you're more upset at Kaepernick kneeling and, quote, disrespecting the flag than you are about the systemic racism and the police brutality that he's peacefully protesting against when he kneels. So I just kind of went down this litany of things that were important to me, and I tried to write from a different perspective than straight white male,
Yeah.
he, him, Jeff. I tried to put some levity into it that other people could relate to, and having Lydia contribute some additional vocals is really good because her songs are always so honest and her lyrics are always so kind of taboo and provocative and kind of sexual anyway. So
Is she like a solo artist? I'm actually unfamiliar with her.
yeah, she's really popular on like the alt country scene.
Oh, yeah.
And I think she went through a time where, like, I talked to her about it a little, where she was with management or labels who maybe were trying to, like, it wasn't like they were trying to turn her into Britney Spears or anything, but they were like, they would like market her in a way that was like cute or sexy or whatever. And like, I think she's so far past that now. And like her new record is so brilliant because it's just so her. And like, she's able to poke fun at herself. She's able to be very sexual with her lyrics. She's able to be,
that's cool.
Yeah, like
Lizzie
really
from
forward.
Hailstorm said that she had the same problem. That a lot of labels wanted to make her like this pop star, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Lydia enough to like really reject that, but I asked her about it once because I interviewed her in a segment kind of like this, where I said, like, you have like these older videos where it's like you on a bed and you're kind of like reading, and she just started giggling. She's like, yeah, I got the feeling that wasn't really her. Yeah. So as she's kind of turned a corner in her career, she's always been like unapologetic with the lyrics that she writes.
Cool.
And if I'm saying like, oh, well, if you love the flag so much and you're so worried about people disrespecting it and you're so in love with the flag, why don't you come on it? And that was the line that I wrote. And I was like, I should sing this, but it would be more impressive. It would be more powerful coming from a strong female voice. And that's where Lydia came in.
I love that. Well, let's go back to, interviewing you, because I remember at American University, you did a lot of stuff for the college newspaper, interviews, your reviews, and now you're also doing interviews on the side besides your band. I think it's Helloooo TV is what your platform you're doing it on?
Yeah. It's well, I mean, it's kind of a different story for everybody, but on, like the day before St. Patrick's Day, we all had jobs. And then the day after St. Patrick's Day, none of us had work. So some people that I'm friends with who one of them's a videographer, one of them is a front of house engineer, and they tour with bands, you know, like the Shinedowns and Godsmacks of the world and the Newfound Glories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were out of work and they were like, let's start a live streaming concert service that makes sense and see kind of what we can grow of it. And there's a kind of a core 4 of us, and then they have people in Nashville that help run the actual productions. But
That's cool.
yeah, none of us have a business degree, so the learning curve is very steep.
Yeah.
We're all learning on the fly. And one of the things that I knew I could do from our time, you know, learning how to be broadcasters at American University, I can interview and I can bullshit with people. So therefore, you know, if I'm interviewing somebody that was like the 34th place contestant on The Voice in 2009, like I can try to make it interesting, and I can do enough research to ask questions that will maybe pull something out of them than just beyond, you know, like, all right, so tell us about, you know, like, you know. So because none of us were business majors in college and none of us ever thought we would be entrepreneurs in this sense, we're so used to being 1099s and kind of being the elbow grease that makes shows and tours happen and shows happen and records come out. We've all just had to play to our strengths. So Helloooo TV is really an amalgamation of 4 misfits playing to our strengths to try to create a company that provides entertaining live streaming concerts for music fans.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So what artists have like played on there so far, you know?
But I didn't answer the question.
Okay,
I very diplomatically and politically didn't answer the question. So as part of that, I've been interviewing our artists before the shows, either a day or 2 days before, to kind of help, you know, promote and stimulate the audience. And it's especially useful when it's an artist like Jonathan Wyndham or Coco Kinnan, or we had Maggie Miles, who these artists are great, but they're not all that well known outside of like the greater Nashville kind of singer-songwriter enclave. And those waters are so oversaturated anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to, you know, give people some flesh and blood. Like, yeah, you can write great songs and you can sing wonderfully, but like, they, you know, it's like they want this. They want to get to know the people. Some of the better shows we had William Michael Morgan, who's a tremendous country singer. We had Karen Waldrop, who's also a great country singer. She was the first show we did, and that was the best show that we had. It really spoiled us until this past week. We had Smith and Myers. It's Brent Smith and Zach Myers, their acoustic side project from Shinedown, and their numbers were phenomenal. And their show was good, even though it was just the 2 of them. It was cool to see, you know, total pros with that dynamic, kind of keeping it real. So yeah, anybody that's interested, Helloooo TV, that's HELLOOO TV.com.
All right. Well, anything come up for you, or you maybe do like a music video for a single, or I know you just released it, or any other new music in the works, or?
Yeah, there's a video coming out for They Poisoned Our Fathers on Thursday.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be premiering on Brooklyn Vegan. So for anybody that goes there for their music news, you'll see it. Otherwise, just Google Brooklyn Vegan or go to dividedheaven.com. I'll be sure to share it from there. And there's a new record on the horizon, but there's no touring on the horizon.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting pressure on myself to get the record done. It'll be done when it's done. And then someone we actually went to school with, Aleda Gagarin, who lives in Queens, New York City, is running for city council.
Really? Wow.
We are holding a fundraiser for her this Sunday, which is November 1st. And this is just a fundraiser. But it's important to know that if you live in New York City, or even in New York State anyway, and you pay the $10 fee, it's matched. If you're a New Yorker, it's matched. So
that's great.
They need to fill that out. But yeah, it's our friend Jack, and it's myself, and then it's Chris number 2 from Anti-Flag, AledaForCouncil.com/concert. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
OAU.
Yeah. So I feel good. I'm actually playing a proper live stream show, but it's for a good cause.
What was the last concert you actually got to attend before everything shut down?
Kiss at Staples Center.
That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. We were lucky enough to do the meet and greet. Um, it was far enough into the virus that they didn't shake my hand. They gave me the elbow. But I did look Gene Simmons right in the eye and say, "Shalom," and he gave me a little bit of a smirk, and I was like,
That's awesome.
"Yes."
Yeah, I saw Local H in Soul Solemn, and it was like I think the shutdown happened like the very next day. So the whole time driving there, I was like, or maybe it was 2 days after that. I was like refreshing my feed. Is the concert still going on? It's like,
Yeah,
it's like
that's a good show. Where'd you see them?
it was someplace I never heard of in downtown LA. It was like a little bar or something. But yeah,
Oh,
it was cool. It was, I mean, it was kind of scary because I remember the NBA like shut down their season that night. So everyone was like, well, what's gonna
uh,
happen? It's like, it's like,
yeah, we were driving to the Kiss concert, and I was with a friend of mine who's a tattoo artist, and he said, "I'm supposed to go to France for this convention, but," and our other friend Brian's like, "Dude, that ain't happening." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Dude,
Yeah, I mean,
they're
everyone
gonna."
thought it'd be like 2 weeks at the
Yeah, he's like,
most.
"No, they're canceling Coachella. Like they're postponing it till the fall. So you're
Uh,
lucky." And now here we are. It's fall, and we're
yeah,
in a worse situation than we were in March. So
yeah.
I don't know.
We're still no plan. Well, anyway, man, I'm gonna let you go because I know you got another Zoom in a couple minutes. But good to catch up with you, man, and congrats on the new single. And we'll talk down the road when new music comes available. All right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're willing to have me back,
Oh, absolutely, man.
yeah, man.